Phase 2 of AI adoption is really 95% of your company contributing code to the repo. Whenever I'm working with a client and they're like, oh, we want to automate this, you better be ready to put in 3 to 10x amount of time to try to automate that one thing. If you had to give kind of one piece of advice to the folks here who haven't built, how would you help them take that first step?
If I can do it, you can do it. I'm not a technical guy. I think there's a psychological block to take that first step and just say, okay, Claude, this is what I want to do. So if I could do this a couple of hours on a weekend, then why not? And so all of a sudden it's like, wow, what else can I build?
What is one thing that you specifically don't delegate to AI?
I think the one thing that I would just caution is you need to test it.
One of the things we are building is a way for us to have a brain inside our business. Welcome to Kill in Rancho Bernardo. Today, we've got an amazing group of individuals, and they are people who I respect, who I cannot wait to have a conversation with. I wanted to find people that are real business owners and executives who are grappling through this adoption of AI. What's working, what's not working, and hopefully also inspire other folks in the audience. So if AI can do everything we can do, what's left? And so tonight, it's an important conversation, being some of the first movers, understanding how this technology works, and how you are the one that's going to make a difference and not AI. Tune in wherever you get your podcasts and follow us on LinkedIn. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message, send it to them too.
This is part 2, which is a live podcast. And this is filmed. And the point of tonight, other than genuinely getting an in-person moment to share a conversation about a high-level understanding of AI adoption, but it's also to introduce panelists who are doing it in such crazy different industries. As we have conversation up here, there is going to be a moment of Q&A at the end. And in a room, having questions amongst yourselves is one of the most rich ways to learn and grow. And we are going to have opportunity for Q&A. I'd love for you to, if you need it on your phone, I know it helps me track, to say, this is a question that I have burning in my brain regarding AI adoption, or what I would do to stay human, or if there's value pursuing collaboration, if sometimes I feel like my ideas are gonna get stolen, or, some of those are kind of touchy things, and I don't know where your brain's at, and I don't know what you're building, and I don't know what you're passionate about. But the room and the roaming mic is ripe. And I just would love for you guys to have that percolating while we have conversation up on stage. Sound good? Everybody say woo? Woo! B-. Okay, let's go ahead, because I want to step straight into the podcast. Give a very warm welcome and a round of applause for Alex Lee, the CEO and founder of Kazka AI.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out today. We're going to hop into the panel discussion. I have brought together some of my favorite people and new friends. And the reason why I've selected all these people is because I've had great conversations with them. And they are the people who inform my worldview and have shaped a lot of what I have discussed today. I would like to first introduce to the stage Dr. Arjun Khanna. So, Dr. Arjun Khanna is a neurosurgeon and researcher at UCSD. He serves as an assistant professor, and his research focus is actually on how individual neurons give rise to language, thought, and perception. And we started talking about AI one day, and our conversation was just so rich, and I value your perception and your worldview, and thank you for being here.
Of course.
All right, next I'd like to invite Jake Brenner. Jake is the CEO and founder of ShipLab. He's grown this business from 800 square feet to 275,000 square foot to become an Inc. 5,000 third-party logistics warehouse. And he also leads a digital marketing agency called Market, we have recently founded a startup together called yourpath.care, helping seniors and families find care. And in his spare time, he started another startup called
Is this an
Rivi.
intervention?
Please stop. Your wife is really upset.
That's why she's not here.
But I've known Jake since high school. And ever since I think you were 11, you have been an entrepreneur painting curbs. And Jake has been a very influential person in my life. And I'm very grateful to have you here.
Thanks.
Thank
Likewise.
you. All right. I'd like to introduce Michel Abood. Michel and I just recently met. He was born in New York and lived partly in France. So he grew up in a variety of different cultures, especially different tech cultures. And that's kind of shaped who he is today. He, out of college, founded a lace design company with a single CAD machine, grew it to be, scaled it up to an entire manufacturing business for intimates. And as of late, he has a wine distribution company that he has started, scaled to 36 states and a couple of different countries. I met Michel at a Claude event where he walked through a tool that he had vibe coded for his business about how his salespeople didn't always know what was in stock. And in order to buy a system, it was thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars.
Way too much.
Yeah. And Michel built it himself in one weekend. And I thought this is the perfect example of the type of leadership and people who are building today and solving their own problems. So welcome, Michel.
Thank you.
And then finally, I'd like to welcome Laura. Laura Moore is a fractional chief growth officer and CEO of Find the Fox, a growth consulting firm to focus on med tech, manufacturing, and life sciences. She has spent her early career running a media company where she ran special events around the world, and in 2022 jumped into the world of tech. And it's true, Austin introduced us. And ever since we met, we've been working very closely together. I'm very grateful for Laura helping grow Kazka as a brand, as a thought partner, and all of the work that she's done to make this event happen. So welcome, Laura. So Laura, I'd actually like to start off with you. You know, I feel when we first started working together, I threw you in the deep end. I was like, here's Claude, have fun. You better max all your tokens. Now that it's been a couple of months, I'd love to hear your perspective on how you think AI is going to impact strategy and execution for growth going forward.
That's such a big question. To color in the lines, joining your team, I was met with every point as a frac or fractional. That means many different things, and people throw away titles. I came in with a background in marketing with a core belief that story and value and pushing the core of an idea is really what buys people in. So when I had no team or like designers, usually I'm over a department. So I come in and I have bite-sized contracts to be able to deploy leadership for 9 months, and then I try to get out of there to help sustainability. Well, there was no team, and I was being asked to build with Claude these initiatives that I would have been an intern, would have been a graphic designer. Claude Design had just deployed about a month ago, and we were challenged to create suites that would have otherwise been things that my team or interns could have deployed. And that communication then was scattered, so we also then had to create a system to share, this is all the things I can now do very, very quickly, and that was another element. So organization, and then asset deliverables, and then posting are all three areas that are often like a role in and of itself, and it was a lot. But it was facilitated, and it was messy. It's been really messy, but lots of learning to be able to see a different way of working.
Yeah. So one of the things we are building is a way for us to have a brain inside our business so that it is both human machine readable. And as we go through this process, it can be messy, but it's a lot of fun. Jake, one of my realizations that you gave me is that I'm actually a terrible product manager.
You are?
Yes. And I had this realization when I taught you how to use Claude Code, because the way that his brain clicked and he started to just build and build and build, I realized all these ideas, I would have never even thought about them because you're such a subject matter expert. So I'd love to ask you, what was happening in your head when you were coming to this realization that you could start building?
So I've had ideas forever, as he just rambled off a bunch of stuff that I've tried to do, and doesn't mean they're all successful, but I'll try. And so Claude has completely like unlocked that was probably a good barrier to entry for me in some cases. And so then when you remove that, for years at our business, we run tens of thousands of products. We ship tens of thousands of products a day, and there's a ton of data there. And I've always wanted certain types of reporting and certain data that could forecast, and we were so limited by the software stack that we had. I'm not a developer, and I don't have the patience to learn how to code. And so I've had this entire existence of being just frustrated, knowing that I want something but could never do it. And I'd hire people and just like light money on fire, because I'd send an email and be like, this is what we want. And then we'd go to sleep and wake up the next day, it's totally wrong. And then I'd write another email and I'd go to sleep. Okay, that's right, this is wrong. And we just go on and on and on, and we're burning through hours and time. And then Alex and I kind of sat down, and he's like, I think if you just turn the microphone on and just start rambling, like what could happen? And it was ridiculous. It was like, oh, that's exactly what I wanted. That's wrong and this is wrong. Okay, those are fixed right now. And by no means am I trying to say like we're going to be the next Salesforce and build some enterprise software. And I think that's like a really important, sobering moment that you kind of have to have for yourself if you haven't built. Is the first step of creation is very, very easy. The actual refinement, reliability, that piece of it, you will go through hell and back to get to that point and throw your computer out the window. But if you just kind of persevere, like you can get something that's actually really meaningful without having to spend all of your time trying to relay the subject matter that's in your head to someone that arguably has no reason to know anything about that, because that's not their core, right? They're a developer or whatever their role is. And that's just been insane. My team doesn't see me a lot anymore because I just like post up in my office with headphones on. I'm like, I'm just going to build this. And yeah, it's been really helpful in many cases.
How many tools have you built for ShipLab?
I don't think I want to admit that. It's like a few every day at this point, and it's kind of spun off in its like own thing. But that's the fun part about this, is that you end up building tools that are really bespoke to your business or your specific use case. And so I don't want to call them like products, because they are almost like these little skill sets, right, that are serve a really specific purpose. So you can create a lot relatively quickly. I think the one thing that I would just caution is, as you're using it with large data sets, you need to test it. It will tell you that this is the best way to organize the warehouse or do this. But again, it's not a subject matter expert necessarily either. That's you. And so, to use your Rick Rubin analogy, which you rudely prevented me from answering, you need to be Rick Rubin. Like you have to tell it, I want this, I don't want that. That's really, really, really important. That's your role.
Michel or Arjun, anything you'd like to add on the topic of building?
No, I completely agree. I think going forward, for at least small to mid-market companies, custom apps made by people in the company who know the problem and are experts in the subject matter will be going forward, will be the state of things going forward. And Claude Code especially makes it so easy to create something that it's almost like, well, everybody can be a problem solver. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think one thing that resonated is remembering that you're not trying to build the perfect product every time for every problem. That's been a little bit of a learning curve for me. But I think part of maybe developing taste is getting a sense of what will be good enough to solve the problem, immediately in front of you, because you could. I think I found myself many times, and I'm sure you have too, spending way too many hours and tokens on trying to make, something that's perfect and extensible and anybody and everybody should use this when you just started the day with a quick 10-minute problem and you should have stopped hours ago.
Yeah, whenever I'm working with the client and they're like, oh, we want to automate this, I'm like, okay, well, if it takes you X amount of time, you better be ready to put in 3 to 10x amount of time to try to automate that one thing. And the concept of being able to test and all of that it's a new concept to a lot of people, but it's a very important one. Arjun, in your work and research, Claude is this really, really great tool to be able to synthesize things. How has Claude shaped how you research today?
Yeah, it's for myself and more of the community as we talk about it. It's slowly changing the game. I think there's a lot less premium placed on just volume of words that you can spit out on a piece of paper. And I think what it's actually doing is pushing us all to think more carefully about fundamental concepts and the fundamental crystallized ideas behind what might appear in very long documents. Somebody had mentioned the idea of really unlocking someone's capability. I think for academics who are heavy into things like data analysis and thinking about biological problems maybe, but through the lens of data science, there's been over the years there's been a major hurdle in that you felt like you had to know the ins and outs of Python to be able to say anything meaningful about biology for some reason, and that was me for a large part of my training, and it was fun to learn, but it took years. And so the idea now that we have passionate individuals who want to contribute to totally random fields using the tools of data science to do so, the idea that they can just type in what they want, and skip the 3 years it takes to learn how to use MATLAB or Python or anything is incredible.
And Michel, I'd love to kind of take us back to the moment when you had decided that you're going to build this. A big discussion always in business is buy versus build, and I think that discussion has really changed even in the past year. So I'd love to hear from your perspective, what was your thought process and how did you come to that conclusion?
So our industry is incredibly technophobic, but I've always been interested in technology, and so I was keeping up with a lot of what was being done. I was using Claude a lot, and I had started trying to learn about Claude code. And it became slowly but surely much more obvious that I could probably build something that was unique to my needs and unique to my situation and my context, just by using Claude code. And I wouldn't need to hire a developer, because I reached out to a few people, and like you said, it would cost a lot of money. And the problem in our industry is we're a high volume, low margin business. So every penny counts. So if I could do this in a couple of hours on a weekend, then why not? And it didn't cost much to try. And I think a lot of people, there's a psychological block to take that first step and just say, okay, Claude, this is what I want to do. And I still get a whole bunch of newsletters, and one of the videos I love is from Peter Yang, who walked through creating a 2D retro space shooter. And so I did that with my son, and we built the exact same thing, and it was great. And so all of a sudden, it's like, wow, what else can I build? And when that question hit, it was like, well, what else do I need? And one of the issues we were facing is our sales team sometimes has to call us up, and it disrupts workflows, it disrupts relationship building. So our industry is very relationship driven. So making sure that you're not stepping away from the customer and being like, hold on, I got to call the office and check something. Instead, now, because of this app that I built, you just pull out your phone, hit a big red button, it takes a snapshot of the current inventory right in front of the customer, and they can answer the question right away. And knowing I could build that was enlightening, empowering. It was really, cool. It was just really neat. It was shocking how easy it became. And now, now I look at every problem and I go, well, can I build this?
So he was telling us this story just before he used that analogy. And one of the things that I think is really important that a lot of people don't realize, especially now building, is you don't need to create something from scratch. There's a lot of documentation out there. And so in your case, you integrated to some old archaic system, right? You were saying, and Claude kind of laughed at how archaic it was.
Yeah, Claude actually made a comment.
Yeah. And it's amazing now because existing businesses use existing tools, and there's already existing developer documentation out there. And so easily copying a URL and saying, hey, here's where all the documentation is, go build me a connector to this, is something that is just such a massive game changer. Until they get to MCP servers and kind of direct integrations, there's a lot of resource already out there to where you don't feel like, okay, well, I have to build everything. You could absolutely build, in your case, like the tool just that you need and connect to external data sources, because a lot of that documentation was out there for human developers already. And so I think that's something that was a big unlock for me, is realizing I'm not siloed. I can connect to all of this.
Yeah, being able to upload documentation about a tool or an API, Claude will just eat it up and be like, cool, this is what we need to do, done. I want to go back to something you were saying, Michel, and this is for anybody in the group. You were saying people just need to take that first step in building. If you had to give kind of one piece of advice to the folks here who haven't built, how would you help them take that first step?
I would just say, if I can do it, you can do it. I mean, I'm not a technical guy. You know, I did a little HTML a long time ago. I love to know how things work. So once I really got interested in AI, I took the AWS AI Practitioner Certificate. So I'd love to know how the back end works, because when you know what something can do, you also know what it can't do. And I did the same thing when I got into wine, and the same thing when I got into fashion. And you know, you don't need to do all that, though. You can just literally just tell Claude, hey, I need this. How do I do this? You know, like you said, do the role, the goal, the context, and you know, you'll get something. And working with it and iterating with it, you can really build something that's unique to you and your use case. And I think you just need to have that psychological leap. And it's not even a big leap of faith when you look back. Like every first step, the first step is the hardest one. You know, it's just saying, okay, how do I do this?
You know, this another thing that resonated with your comments earlier, and I think applies. One thing that's held me back, oftentimes, that I'm learning slowly to let go of, I think applies to your comment about delegation. Oftentimes, there's like an inner nerd in me that kind of wants to figure out how to do it myself, you know? And so, you know, there's this like sick pleasure in like, you know, ripping your hair out in front of, you know, Python documentation.
I do not resonate with that at all.
Yeah, me neither. I don't have enough hair left.
Yeah. And so, yeah. So, you know, there's just kind of, there's like, you know, I have this problem, and man, I just want to be able to solve it myself. So learning, and I think there is still value in that, but I think it speaks to your point, you know, of learning to delegate. Is that you know, there's some problems out there, I think probably in all of our workflows, or where you don't really need to get into the details. You just need it to work. And I think, you know, just asking Claude to do it is great. There are others, I would still argue that, you know, I think there is some benefit to inventing the wheel, because you really figure out how to, you know, how it works, and learning when you want to let go and when you don't, I think has been a challenge for me, but maybe a challenge for others as well.
I think I want to, so bouncing off, I feel like this is a really good yin and yang right now, because I have zero love of building. I think that the desire to fix a problem, and I am not the one to do that. My husband is often the tinkerer. The thing that drives me is usually relationships. So to answer a question as to what is fun to build, first I would answer that I think that's one of the 6 skills that I'm weakest at, because I would want to buy instead of build. It's more interesting to me and more efficient to be like, well, who else is building it, and then like deploy it, and then we'll get the show on the road. But one of the examples of a build that I did under Kazka was I was motivated by how I could facilitate communication and people better, and that was in onboarding podcast guests. And there was so much back and forth of emails like bios and headshots, and oh, by the way, let's set up a time, and what's your background? Also, what questions shouldn't we talk about? Can you just hop on a call? And especially if you're dealing with high-level people who are very busy running businesses, I just felt uncomfortable. I was like, this is wasteful. Like, I don't think it's respectful of somebody's time, but the relationship is really good, and I want this to be a valuable asset to them and this conversation we're going to have. I think podcast is like the most powerful marketing channel that I really believe in. So I leaned in and I built a platform that would onboard, and it was a registration portfolio. It's nothing really fancy. I didn't get into a terminal and backing and stuff. I didn't nerd out about it either. I was just like, what is the flow that a relationship needs to take in order to populate the data cleanly, have it accessible by my team, and then deploy it so that the lift is as minimal as possible of my guest and deploys with excellence and relationship. And that's what has inspired me to keep groaning along and building, and where it motivates. If the person on the other end of the receiving end is honored and the relationship is facilitated, that makes building make sense to me. That lights my fire.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. Within our company, what we do every single Friday is we have demo days where everybody needs to share something that they've built this week. And it doesn't matter if it's a whole new workflow for integrating or intaking podcast guests, or it can be figuring out how to keep track of all of our expenses in the business. Somebody will always share, and this is one way to drive a culture of building within your own organization when you ask people to share what they're working on. Laura, question for you. Now that we are able to create almost anything, and we almost have like infinite content, right? And everywhere we look, you can generate almost anything you want. From your perspective, what will someone need to do now to evolve and keep up with that and be able to harness instead of just put more slop out into the world?
This is a really good question. Can you raise your hand in the room if you're in marketing or in storytelling or content are really high? I see you. You're being sheepish. Okay. I mean, slop is just so obnoxious. It was when it started, and it's now getting so noisy that I think it's perpetuating a fatigue that makes content sometimes, unfortunately, ineffective. To be able to harness good content, I honestly, I'm not going to wax eloquent on something I don't know, I'm not exactly sure. I do know that content that I've seen to personally perform well is when it's attached to relationship, and that turns into quality over quantity. I live in LinkedIn, and so I really enjoy writing. I use M dashes, and I get called out for being AI all the time. I'm like, no, I actually did write that. I'm sorry. But it's interacting in a way that I value you. When you say something that's true and thoughtful, Pedro, can you raise your hand in the room? I see you in the back. He also is working in AI. He had a post 2 weeks ago in his content. It was, I believe, a generated flyer of something that was about EQ. And yet, what he wrote, it felt, I mean, maybe he did use a very well prompted skill on Claude, but the content was just saying, like, engineers need to have EQ. Like, engineers need to start thinking about what is behind the spirit of a developer, because a lot of the knowledge work is going to be, mutable. And that's really offensive. That's really offensive to really bright people. And I remember reading that, and I hadn't read something that was thoughtful and challenged like that in a bit. And I remember posting and responding and DMing, being like, thank you for bringing truth, and a thoughtful thing to this engagement, and also honoring the human behind knowledge workers who are being threatened right now. I think that's what I hope to contend for. And I don't know if I'll be a boomer in 20 years being like, oh, it's such I just hope that we stay relational. And if there's slop, it could be in real life events that start to combat the content. If not, slow down and comment realistically. Do not make Claude write a comment on a LinkedIn post. Just say it from your own words and then do something real. But that's a human responsibility.
Jake, any thoughts on that from the world of digital marketing?
I think that we're all lazy. And so it's very easy to say, like you showed the video, you're like, okay, this would cost tens of thousands of dollars in time, and yeah, it's a prompt away for 80% of it. But I do agree with you. I think that remaining 20% is where kind of magic will happen and where you can kind of separate yourself. And if you lose sight of the human piece of it, then yeah, you're doomed. Like, don't expect it. But I think that remaining 20% is where you, as a tastemaker, as a human, as valuing other humans, weirdly as like a population, I think we're at like a very pivotal time where you need to focus, and we all need to go, yes, we still care about humans with AI. Like, that's very important. We can't lose sight of one for the other. But ironically, the humans are building the AI, and we are imperfect people, and we're lazy. So I don't totally know the answer to that, but I think it's just too easy. We want results, and this is easy results, and we're willing to sacrifice quality for easy results most of the time, unfortunately.
Wait, I have to ask you about this because you've used content for ShipLab. I just saw something hit on my sponsored, like it was a paid ad.
I might need to leave the room.
I'm so sorry. I'd be like, oh. But wait, it was good though. It really captured well. Was any of that agentic or generated?
I'd have to ask our team.
Is it? Shoot, yeah. Just so you know, you have a really good asset. I don't know if you've seen it.
We do use, I know we do use image generation for some of our images. I have one of the key criterias that really irks me, and I've gotten a little bit less brutal about this, is photos of warehouses that aren't ours. Was kind of like this really like sticking point to me, and then I realized, this is really not going well for me, that I'm lazy and that we just need to get photos up, and so like whatever, it's fine, it's a forklift. But we would start having these photos of people would show their warehouses and these huge warehouses, and I go, I know that company. They don't have that. No, like I've worked really hard to get to the size that we are at. Damn those people. And so as we got larger and we needed to produce more, there's little elements of it that I think are important, but I don't think we try to not lose like a sense of realism there of like, no, this is what our warehouse looks like. If it's AI generated, that's kind of an interesting question, right? It's like, you walked in, could it be mistaken for that? Yes. Okay, maybe I'm a little all right on that one.
I almost got you in trouble.
You can take old photos of your warehouse and just have it replicate those too.
Yeah, and we've done that before too, because we've had a photo of like an empty warehouse when we first move in, and then, okay, now the warehouse is full. Yes, we'll go around and take some other photos, but if we like one, we'll kind of touch it up a little bit.
Question for the group. What is one thing, or maybe a couple of things, that you specifically don't delegate to AI?
I'm going to answer for your surgeries.
Yeah. I still control the robot for now. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that part of the answer is because I genuinely think you can't right now. Is any kind of truly creative work, and creative in the sense of, there are times in academia or even in the clinic where you're being asked to do one of those things that I think is still uniquely human, whether it's make a judgment call about what you're going to do with a patient, or propose an innovative scientific idea. The problem is that with AI as it currently exists, it will be more than happy to do that for you, but it's not real. and the two reasons I refused so far, have refused to engage with AI in those contexts is, one is because it's not real, and there's a trust thing there. But the other is that I think that there's this very dangerous cognitive offloading that happens, where when you start to use it, it just becomes so easy to keep using, and I think your skills atrophy very quickly. And so those are the reason I don't is not because it'll make the wrong decision or it'll say something stupid. The reason I don't is because I really want to keep those skills sharp for myself, and so I keep them.
I'll say, in our part of the industry, we import natural wines, and there's a philosophy in the natural wine world called wabi-sabi, which is Japanese for the beauty of imperfection. And I tried writing emails using ChatGPT and Claude, and it came across like we've all seen it. It's sort of generic slop. And trying to keep within that philosophy for our sector to remain relevant in the business, I find that, to your point, I don't want to lose that skill set when I'm writing my marketing emails to my distributors and to their customers, and keeping that sense of humanity and nature alive. And so I don't use it for writing our emails. I don't use it for posting on Instagram. Everything we do, that's 100% human. But on the back end, like designing labels, data analysis, stuff like that, that's useful for at least for us. It's where it comes in handy.
So when Alex and I first started talking about how we could work together on ShipLab and implement AI, the most obvious one was customer support. We get a lot of tickets from our clients saying their customer said they didn't receive a package, something like that. And then we have to go through the motions of sending them video and say, no, we did pack this, and yada, yada, yada. It's very daunting. It's very annoying. Customer service is the easiest thing nowadays to outsource. And so it seemed like that's the most obvious choice. I don't think I need to ask the crowd, but like everyone here has talked with a chatbot or even a voice agent, right? Now I talked to one the other day to like book an HVAC appointment and just started laughing because I'm like, I'm an idiot. I'm talking to this thing on the phone. But I still did it. And I didn't want that sacrifice because in our business and a lot of yours, the relationship is kind of a theme tonight. The relationship that we have with our clients is what keeps them with us. We're a warehouse. And if we do what we say we're going to do, we'll be successful because the bar in our industry is relatively low. But that's because relationships are not valued in our industry. And so if we are valuing those relationships as a differentiator, it's allowed us to keep clients for a lot longer, as well as renewals and win new business. And so my first thought was, this is great. We've got all this knowledge. We can easily automate support and people ask questions. And then as we start to see, oh, I love talking to Susie. She's amazing. She helped me with this, that, and the other thing. And having the conversation with Susie early on saying, don't worry, we're not going to lose your voice and your spirit. And if you ever meet her, she's like impossible to replicate. Like she is just a bundle of energy. You interviewed her at one point too. And I just gave up on the project. I was like, this is dumb. No, like why would I put that at risk with a client knowing that in our business we're B2B. And so we've got 60 clients or so. It's not worth it for me to save a little bit of money on a customer service ticket when those are actual opportunities to improve the relationship that we have with a client and show them that we are still human, and then we'll use all the technology on the back end to make her more efficient, to make our warehouses more efficient, but we still show that at the face of our business, we are still human. And I think that's been really important.
I would probably add, again, marketing, that headshots are really easy to get on AI. You can sniff them from a mile away. Some of them have gotten really good, but as a former photographer, there is something really special about being able to capture somebody and then navigate that time with a client, and the material comes back in a way that is drawn because of rapport. And I've not seen a robot be able to do that yet. And then another area I have not let AI touch is LinkedIn, because the methodical nature of responding to DMs on a personal way, whether or not they could say, oh, they probably just automated it, I don't want it to. And I think that discipline for quality, even when quantity is available to me, there's a lot of tools out there. And then people, to show up to rooms, it's very expensive. If time is money, it's very expensive to go in person, but to invest and show up in a room and stay curious and ask questions, and then to follow up with a text message that wasn't just populated by a data sheet and on my notes and now text them a really sensitive email. Like, I could do that. I can now deploy connectivity and hope they don't sniff it. But I chosen not to. And I hope to not to for the future.
Thank you. So we're going to do one rapid fire question, and then we're going to open it up to the room for any questions that y'all might have. The rapid fire question, we'll go down the line, is the AI mirror in front of me reflects.
Kind of a nerd, I think. Yeah, that's mine. Yeah, dig into how things work and spend way too much time in tokens, digging into the details.
Someone who can easily turn a stupid 1-year-old birthday invitation into a full invite platform. Instead of spending $5, he has now spent thousands and thousands of hours building.
I don't know, this was a tough one. I was asking myself this because I'm very interested in technology, but I'm in such a legacy industry that, it's really hard to implement technology. But I guess I would say I just want to be somebody who's at the forefront of what I think is the next industrial revolution. I'm incredibly excited about it. I'm also a little concerned because I think we are losing some of the human touch and taste. To your point, I think relationships are becoming important again. For a long time, we lost in real life events. People were behind their screens. I have friends who have to kick their kids out of the basement and say, I want the cops to call me. Go, get in trouble, get the fuck out of the house. And, I understand. I see a whole generation who are just stuck on their tablets and their phones, and it's horrifying. Our industry has suffered a lot because of this and a few other things. Alcohol consumption is at a 90-year low. It was at probably a 1,000-year high during the pandemic, so we're probably balancing things out, which is good. I'm all for moderation, by the way. Let me just get that. But I think it's important to remember that we are social animals. And it's hard sometimes. It's hard to come out to these events. It's hard to put yourself out there at these networking events. And I hope people keep doing that, or get back to doing it. And we're starting to see it again. I'm seeing a lot of activity here in San Diego. I go to New York a lot, and I go to a lot of events. So, wow, that was a long-winded answer. Sorry about that. So.
That was great.
If AI was a mirror, I think I really want to be honest about this answer. I feel like my AI mirror is very messy right now because the thing that I care about most is people and figuring out how in different industries work and where if I go on to a team, I can actually be helpful. So in rooms and people, my most common prompt is act as an expert data analyst and then a PR publicist. Because those two experts in fields have to run the data and then synthesize it and then output it for people so that it's palatable. And I'm constantly doing that between other different platforms. But it's not, the thing that AI can't do is care about people. And I think that there is a groan in any project I've deployed because there's, that it's not helping me be effective if I keep iterating and iterating, like that whole perseverating over a thing. And so if the mirror does reflect me, it's that I'm frustrated that I could spend so much time building something that I hope creates efficiency, but ironically, it still took me out of the running with people. And I think that balance is something is very human, and to try to stay, to know when to not build and when to just stay really simple, I think is a skill that I'm really just sorting through that right now. I'm learning what can be done, but it's kind of messy right now.
Thank you for the honesty. All right. I would love to open it up to the room to see if there's any questions from folks for any of the panelists, myself. Go ahead.
Yeah, so for each of you, where is the balance between doing the work yourself with AI and working with AI to do it versus delegating to somebody else to be able to do it?
Can I nominate you? I want to nominate Jake to answer this question because I had a pre-event conversation, and I think your perspective on your team is actually really good, and you've had a good legacy. I'll keep talking so you can percolate on it. So, like, what I mean to say, no. When we were chatting, I was asking you, are there areas where you found AI to be threatening to your team, and where have you chosen to deploy it, or where have you chosen to not, and why? Which is similar, but you said something specific about your team.
About them, what they want to do? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay. You can give me the answer. Oh, you can just give the answer for me. So I think I really struggle with delegation. I always have from the very beginning. And we work in a warehouse. We got about 30 team members now, 60 brands. Like I can't do everything. I've found that the way that I delegate is I bury myself to a point where I can't do anything else, and then I'm forced to delegate. And I don't recommend it for the sake of a variety of different reasons. But I found that that's how I get. And so I think to what I would recommend in your case and what I usually do is AI has been a phenomenal tool to prototype, to develop first step of something. because it's in your head and you can get it out of your head into something that someone can see. And then from there, if you need to keep scaling it up to something, then you can bring on a team, hire someone. But you have a lot of that initial legwork done, especially if you don't have the capital to hire a team and kind of get this, like Alex was saying, with Instagram and Facebook. Sure, you could hire a full stack team, get all the UX stuff. You probably don't have the time or the money to do it, and that's okay. So start somewhere, just start somewhere. But to answer your question on where, things that we don't want to do, we're in the process of integrating robotics in 2 different capacities in our warehouses. And that's a touchy subject in warehousing. There's a lot of talk about AI displacement and people and jobs and so on. But I think one of the things that people aren't talking about is they're getting answers from the wrong people. Like, go to the warehouse, go to these jobs and ask someone, do you like doing this job? Could you be doing something else? And it's not to say that their job's gone. There's plenty of other jobs that humans are really good at. And so for example, we have one client that has thousands of these boxes that we have to fold every single day. Surprise, no one likes to fold boxes all day long. And so as we brought in the robotics contractor, we brought people up and said, hey, this is why they're here. Do you like folding those boxes? No, I hate folding these boxes. Perfect. They're going to help hire this company. We're going to hire this company. They use AI, they use robotics to take that away so that you don't have to do that. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And now you have team buy-in. And so you feel like you're not trying to displace them, but rather empower them and ask them what they want, because they're going to actually own that a lot better. I know that's like a slight tangent on what you're asking, but.
One thing I'll add on that is, weirdly enough, I've begun delegating work via prompts to my team. And this is something Laura and I went through. But what I've realized is that, I prompt a very particular way. When I kick off a project or want to start a brief, I just start with the prompt. And I look to my team to apply their taste and judgment to take it all the way there. Right, just that starter prompt is only going to get you 50 to 80% of the way there, and this is why you bring on the people that you do, right? Because of their taste, their judgment, their subject matter expert. I want to see where they take it. I want to see them take it to that 100% and show me what does good look like at the end of the day. And I think that's something that I will continue to lean into, because for me, I have seen a lot of success that way.
What's up, guys? I might get some rocks thrown at me for this one. But so last week I had the privilege of going up to the Y Combinator office in San Francisco, and there's a pretty big trend going on around like solo founders, and you don't really need a lot of people to scale a company, because now you can instill the logic that you need to have an execution done within a skill or a prompt or an agent, and from there, and then you can have sub-agents and then sub-agents, and you just kind of, the whole work tree kind of just becomes like a massive robot. So my question to you guys, because the theme around here is like people are important, I agree, but I also work in AI, which is like, that's a bit of a conflict. So for you guys, where is the line drawn between efficiency and profitability versus like team retention and personability?
In the example that you described, I'm a huge solo founder proponent, right, of building things. Anyone can be a founder. Let me make sure that's very, very clear, right? You can start a business. Like, I started a business. Oh, cool. Like, didn't do anything. Okay, it's a project. But the more that you stack below, maybe there's like a question here on kind of brain capacity, but it all goes up to one human being, right? There's still one solo founder there. So as that solo founder, they need to decide, is that the life that they want? Could you build sub-agents and sub-agents? Absolutely. And that might run the whole business. I would argue that they're going to make a ton of mistakes throughout that process to get to that point. And if their mindset is, I'm a solo founder, and maybe it's like a stamp of approval, oh, that was weird, like a stamp of approval or something like that, then so be it. But there's the old adage of, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, you go with the team. I still think that as a founder, as a CEO, my head is in so many different places that having another human to help facilitate different things is still very, very important. I want that person to utilize their time efficiently so that I don't have to hire 5 people below them if we don't need to, if it's something that can be automated or powered by AI. but I still like working with human beings. I don't want to be just by myself forever, because ultimately humans bring taste. And if I'm taste, and my taste is always oranges, I kind of want someone that likes apples and that can kind of balance that out a little bit. I don't know if those are complementary fruits, but you get the idea. So yeah, I think there's a value in both. I still agree that starting as a solo founder, phenomenal. There's like literally no better time to do that. I think that's why I'm so excited for the time that we're in.
I also think this is like highlights and underscores the fact that humans were designed to be different, and that we're designed to be in community together, that we're supposed to build together, that we were never meant from the beginning of time, and this is highly existential, to be able to just do it alone and go alone. And the idea, like, I know my weaknesses, like, and I try to build and have people in my corner who are my weaknesses. I mean, even empathy. Like, I go really hard and I like being incredibly competitive, and I try to chase after people who are slow and kind to be able to say, hey, remember that people are important. And if I didn't build that way, if I didn't grow that way, even in personal life, that I know I'm truncated, if not, sometimes destructive. And if we aren't builders that think of humans as necessary ingredients, not just like, I guess I need to go like do the cognitive offload, or like, I guess I need a team. You do like risk fatigue, but you also risk missing out on the color. And that would be really sad to start utilizing AI in a way that misses a whole point of complexity and like building well and having humans be messy.
Humans are really challenging though too. So like growing a business, there's two sides of this question, because growing a business we've had hundreds of team members over the years, that's very challenging. And so there's something very appealing about this works 99% of the time. It doesn't get sick. It doesn't talk back. It doesn't have drama in the workplace. There's absolutely this feeling of, okay, that does sound pretty nice, but I do think you need to understand both sides to it to kind of see the end journey.
One thing I'll add to that is the solo corn, unicorn. When I started the business by myself, I quickly realized that it's very lonely also. It really is. Being a solo founder, it's incredibly lonely, and you end up in a silo, and you're basically it's like ChatGPT is the only one that's going to be like, great job, you're absolutely right, right? And so you end up in a silo, and I think even if you were to orchestrate the agents and the sub-agents, I think you would unintentionally introduce so much bias from your one perspective that you probably won't get the results that you're looking for. Question, go ahead.
So my question is, where do you guys see the new opportunities? Like, we see some roles like warehouse workers moving away. Where do you think these new opportunities are going to open up? Like, one of the themes I noticed is you guys are talking about people building more custom solutions. Maybe we're going to move away from like SaaS to more custom solutions, or maybe relationships are going to become the more valuable thing, but I don't know if that will pay the rent. So I'm curious, where do you guys think these new opportunities will come from?
I'll start this one off. I think the new opportunities, I personally have a hypothesis of how businesses are going to operate in the future. And I think that, phase 2 of AI adoption is really 95% of your company contributing code to the repo. I think the subject matter expert, when you're condensing the entire process of building and looking to the subject matter expert to figure out the workflow, know what they want, know what they don't want, and go through the process of testing it, but they're not the one committing it. I think there's a huge, huge role for engineers, the entire teams to actually become more cross-functional and understanding and empathetic with one another. Like, you have a marketing person build a workflow, and you have a new perspective on how to build, right? And you can start to actually build empathy for each other through that way too. But I think it's building a system that allows for a team to contribute code safely, right? And being able to have the kind of the final say and commit. That's, I think, the new opportunity, at least from an engineering point of view. Yeah.
I think in the warehouse space, dexterity right now is still something that's very hard to replicate from a robotic standpoint. Obviously, that's getting pretty expedited with AI and with robotics. But depending on the form factor in a warehouse, things are so different, right? We have golf clubs, we have t-shirts, we have cell phone cases, we've got pallets of beverages. Like, there's such a vast array of different things that, yes, companies are working on solving those problems right now. The reality is they're not at a place where it's worth the risk. So one of our largest accounts is a beverage account, and those pallets weigh like 2,200 pounds each, and we stack them very high in the air. I go to the conferences, they have the AI forklift, right? And it gives me massive anxiety to think about an AI forklift driving through the warehouse and stacking that thing 30 feet in the air. Because we don't let team members do that right off the bat, right? They're really getting vetted and training. Do I think the future state is a lot of that? I do, but I think as a species, we need to look at how do we take this tool that it is and bring humans in to say, this is what we think it's really good and applicable for. This is what it's maybe not so great for. And that boundary is really important. And I think from an efficiency standpoint, sure, we all want dollars. And we're getting all these tweets right now from CEOs saying we laid off 30% of these people and we're going to record everyone. I think it was like Zuckerberg's thing. I think that was really poorly handled because you just cut your staff and then told the rest that they're basically on the next round. I don't think that's the right way, but I think that right now they have to put this out there because they need to be thought leaders about AI. Their share price depends on it. But I think there's going to be a reckoning in the future when the dust settles. And again, we go all the way back to the solo founder and you go, okay, now you're there without a team, so to speak. Obviously that's a pretty dramatic extrapolation, but then it's just you. Like, you're going to rebuild all of that? You're not. And so I think that that's an important piece of leadership, is to reassure your team that we're going to bring this in to help you and do what you don't want to do. We are not here to fire people over it.
Custom apps for mid-size companies especially. We tried using some CRM systems and it was just ridiculous because 90% of the stuff for our business, at least in our relationship-driven business, even though you'd think it would make sense, it didn't. It was a lot of money spent for no reason. Whereas I actually built a CRM system with Google Sheets and Claude that super simple, super cheap, does the job. That's all I needed to do. I don't need anything fancy. The emails we sent out, we like I said earlier, we do by hand. You know, everything's done by a human, me. And so I think the opportunities, there are massive amounts of opportunities. And in the SMB space especially, it's the custom apps where you'll find real use cases. Because companies like his and mine, you know, we're not huge, we're not enormous, but we need some things. And some of these things cannot be made or are not available in the general marketplace. And they're really, because those things are really enterprise systems. So being able to have that freedom and that ability to react instantaneously to what you need is where the opportunity, I think, is where some of the opportunities may lie.
Arjun, I'm glad you're reaching for that because I wanted to ask you, you know, from a patient, a meeting with a patient where you have a transcriber all the way to a robot doing surgery. Would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, it's all coming. A lot of it is already here. No, I think to touch on your question about, you know, opportunities, it's been a little bit unique, I think, in the healthcare space that has informed my answer. I actually think it's a little bit of a weird way of answering your question. I think that in the future or now, there's going to be enormous value and a lot, and by extension, a lot of opportunity in creating data, because it's my opinion that at kind of a very high level, large language models and the AI capabilities that they have enabled, you know, have kind of plateaued because we're out of data. There's like no more information to feed them. And, folks are working on, clever new ways of designing the intricacies of the LLMs themselves, and but in this quest for AGI and all this stuff. But I think fundamentally, in a very real sense, we fed it all the data we have, and this is about as smart as it is. So I think I think there's value. There's going to be value, and there is value in creating data. And the sad part about it is that I think in order to retain that value, I think some of the this is my hot take, maybe, is that some of, one of the broad themes of, kind of the internet, maybe over the last 15 years has been a tendency of wanting to open all data, to share data openly and to use it to collective benefit. I think there may now be value in maybe being a little bit more judicious about who gets your data and when they get it and who owns it and how it was generated. Because I think, one of the things that I agree, is somewhat unfair, if we could use that term about LLMs, is that it kind of feels like theft. There was, millennia of human creative output that these companies, just kind of ate, and they didn't really ask anybody. And now they get to have this like cool, awesome tool. And so I think basically what that boils down to is data theft. And so I think a way to generate and retain value in the future is, as you generate data, it's yours, and maybe we should think twice about opening it up, and that applies, I think, to organizations. The reason I mentioned healthcare at the beginning is because this is actually kind of in a very odd way becoming very real in healthcare, where for very good reasons, all of our healthcare data is not Claude didn't train on it, and so there's this reckoning happening. In folks who are interested in trying to push clinical data into these LLM type systems, where for obvious reasons you can or you don't want to. What that's made, I think, is there's now this enormous premium on clinical data because it's not readily available anywhere else, and so that has simultaneously held us as a field back in maybe being at the frontier of what AI can do, but it has also added a lot of value. Because all of a sudden, there's this scarce resource that is a whole bunch of clinical data, and so that's sort of a weird way of answering your question.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you everybody for coming out tonight. Thank you for staying. Thank you for your questions. If you want to continue the conversation, come chat with us right now. And thank you to the panel. Thank you everybody for coming. And yeah. If you're ready to learn how your business can start co-working with AI today, visit Kazka AI and book your discovery call today.